All right. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Cryptic Heartland Podcast, episode number 118. We have a special guest tonight. We have the She-Squatchers. Up to the top or left, up to the top left, we have. Sorry, they're distracting me over here in studio. Up to the top left, we have Jen Cruz, and I'm going to butcher Tammy's name. I know I will. So it's Tammy. Is it Jackson Trichel? Trichel. Ah, I knew it. I practiced all week and I butchered it. So, we are the Cryptic Heartland Podcast. I'm Leo, one of the hosts. The guy to be over Tammy's right shoulder, and that's Dan, the man in the colorful shirt. And then we got Jake and Jason. Jason's the one that's touching the skull right now, and getting close and personal, apparently. They're having some issues behind the scene. I apologize. They can't hear very well for some reason. But we'll make it work. So this is the first episode, the first time that the She-Squatchers actually came on the episode. We are missing Jenna Grover tonight. She's not feeling very well, so we'll get her on. Like I told them, the gals, we'll get her on the next episode. So, right?
You betcha.
Like, we're never coming back. You guys are a bunch of amateurs. We are. So, anywho.
Was that you, Dan?
That was me.
You alright? Okay. Distracting me. So anyways, what's been going on, ladies? I mean, how you guys been coping with this whole Corona COVID-19 thing?
Yeah, that's been kind of a bummer for us. We haven't been anywhere. And my hot spot where I love to go squatching has been closed. It's my reservation. They closed the border to non-tribal members, and they actually have border patrol, so I can't get anybody on the reservation to go looking for Bigfoot in my hot spot. So that's been a bummer this year. So we haven't done a whole lot this year.
Oh no, that's no fun.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a second here. I don't know what's happening here. For some reason, I don't know if the feed went live. I can see it.
I don't think we're live.
I can't see you guys at all. I can only see Jen.
Oh, what happened to us?
Mwah, 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 mwah.
You sure you want that? You sure you want to
Hey,
see
there
us?
you are.
I don't think you want to see us, do you?
It's live on YouTube.
Okay, yeah. For some reason, Facebook crashed. Which, God, Facebook, you gotta love it. It has a mind of its own. Let me try to do something real fast here. I apologize. Let's see what happened here. I'll just manually go live. That'll make it happen. Sorry. If you want to talk boring computer talk, it has to do with things like encoding and all this other garbage, so it doesn't always play nice. So let me get this.
I don't think I've ever been on a radio show that went perfectly smooth, so no worries.
You're not making me feel any better, just say no. But thanks. Thanks for the pep talk. I appreciate it.
I got you.
Nice. Let me get this going here. Oh, hang on. Come on. Just go live. Don't be this way. Make sure you get the title in there.
Darn you, Facebook.
This makes great radio right here. This
Probably.
down
Click,
talk.
click, 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 click.
Let me just do this real quick here. So usually this happens during the middle of the show when we have something going on. Is when it breaks usually. So luckily tonight it happened after we're live. Okay, let's see here. Okay, that won't even let me go live now. That's awesome.
Rock on.
We are live, like the guys were saying. We are live on YouTube and Twitch, but not on Facebook, which is kind of a downer because that's usually our go-to. So let me see why it's being so finicky. Just like.
So meanwhile, everybody look at your phones.
That's right. That's once again that makes great radio and shows, video, especially when you look at your phone.
Well, I'm trying to share the YouTube channel on our Facebook page. So.
Oh, good call. Good call.
Yeah.
There it is.
I don't know why.
Got it?
I got it on. I got the YouTube live shared on our Facebook page. Hi, everybody.
We'll see if that does anything. I guess I have no clue why I decided to do this. It's just how life treats me some days, and today's that day. So
There you go.
I don't want to cancel this and start it over, which that's the only way to fix it, I believe.
Do what you gotta do.
All right, we're gonna take this. We're gonna do part 2. Oh God. So let me just do this real fast here.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
That's right, and we'll see you next week with an all-new, exciting episode of Cryptic Heartland.
Fastest one yet.
Well, no, we gotta go faster than there. If I could get it to stay there, I could hear it real good, but it falls out.
This is crazy.
Daryl's over there laughing at us right now.
Who is? Oh, Daryl. I got you. Almost. Oh, that's a bad joke. It's a dad joke.
That's not Daryl the Bigfoot Daryl?
That's the one he was mentioning. That's why I was like, who's Daryl? Oh, good God. I'm sorry I asked.
Well, I didn't laugh, in case I was just one of your friends. So.
That's where you're wrong. We have no friends, so. Womp womp. I don't know why this is being. I can't even go live. That's what's the problem. Manually. Usually you can just click live and it'll go. So, with that being said, God.
I'm gonna start playing with my hair.
Stop it, you're making Dan jealous. He has no hair to play with.
Oh, you want to borrow some?
Oh my gosh.
Hey, I do that, I shave that shit.
Sure. We're not talking about your back. We're talking about the top of your head. I'm gross, I'm sorry. Alright, anywho. This is what you get when things don't work. You get me insulting people, apparently. Oh my gosh. Why is it not letting me connect? Darn you, Facebook.
So yeah, like we can't get this to work. It's so staticky. It's like
Let's see here. God.
I might be a second behind here, but I'll be on with YouTube.
How awesome is that?
What's-
That logo behind your head? That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Well, only you can see it. Nobody in the... No, I'm just kidding. They can see it on YouTube and Twitch, just never on Facebook right now. I don't understand why it's... sorry. This is the part where I start getting grumpy because when things don't work right. Do what? You can be the one person on YouTube. Come on. It's like something changed where it won't let me go live on YouTube or on Facebook for some reason.
I don't have my readers on, so it's either Danny Gamer or Garner. I can't tell. That's watching. Hi.
Thanks for tuning in to watch us talk to ourselves
Yay,
and amongst ourselves.
This is the pre-show, don't worry. The real
This
show's
is the
happening.
VIP portion of our show.
Yeah. Heck yeah. If you have any questions, you can sure type it in there, and that would be awesome.
I barely got my stuff in there so I could hear it. I'm gonna share this on Facebook.
Okay, I'm going to try to just make it go live
Okay.
on Facebook. Come on. Act like you want to.
What the wife said last night.
Oh my gosh.
I apologize.
So we didn't have this problem last week, just so you know, or the week before. It's just tonight's special episode. Yes, you're the lucky recipient.
We're gonna talk Bigfoot, aka we're gonna end up going to Tahlequah, so why would it not? You can at least let us get started. I know, Tahlequah won't. So jelly, they're playing with their hair, look at that.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. That's me clicking things. Sorry. Well, we can let it do its thing. It was supposed to start in 6 minutes, so we'll just play catch up with the rest of the group, rest of the world. We'll just go live right now with as is. So, all right. So once again, we got the very entertaining She-Squatchers. I blame myself, obviously. I'm trying to make small jokes because of everything's not being fun. So
Small jokes, and you're not talking about chasing. Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
I mean, we weren't.
in case you don't know, Jason is our Jenna, which Jenna we all know is very short. She's 5'5", and she's not here tonight. So Jason, how tall are you? Is Jenna taller than you?
I have no idea. I can't hear anything, so I can't.
Okay, he
I
can't.
don't know what's going on.
So, no, anyways, but seriously,
Barely.
Yeah, I can't hear anything.
I don't know what happened. Nobody's touched anything, and nobody's done anything. That's another thing about the Cryptic Heartland studio. This is, I know your guys' first time on the show. Our studio is haunted. We'll come in and things will be turned the wrong way, not working, even though it just worked minutes ago, and just in the middle of the show it'll just stop. So, just forewarning you. We talk about certain places, which we will bring up tonight. It's a place that we went Bigfoot hunting and also or squatching. We went to do paranormal research down there, and every time we mention on the show, people would like shudder because it kills everything. Basically, all of our equipment goes dead.
Is yours good? 'Cause I got
So,
mine. You fixed it.
God, these guys. So, anyways, so what got you guys started in Bigfoot hunting? I mean, I know I read your guys' bios and all that stuff. I've heard your guys' stories, but to our viewers that are watching, what turned you guys on to this phenomenal field?
Awesome. So I'm Jen Cruz, and I was doing paranormal radio shows for years, and I didn't really know anything about Bigfoot. I had never really thought about Bigfoot or considered whether or not Bigfoot was real. But we had a big Minnesota Paracon event, and Lauren Coleman, the cryptozoologist who owns the International Cryptozoology Museum in the state of Maine, was one of the guest speakers at the Paracon. And I asked him if he would do an interview for my show, and he said yes. So we did a sit-down, really long interview. It was awesome. And he was so passionate and so knowledgeable about Bigfoot and so scientific. It just kind of, it took my curiosity to a new level. And he had an idea, and he thought that the recipe for success in finding and interacting with Bigfoot would be to send women into the woods without men, dogs, or guns. And he thought that this would bring them in closer, be a little bit more curious, because women aren't very threatening. And also he said that the most of the time, you know, when people have a sighting of Bigfoot near a road, it's not usually family units of Bigfoot. It's usually just one singular Bigfoot, a younger male that's out on his own, probably, and doing the stuff he's not supposed to do, like our younger males might be doing. And he thought these Bigfoot would be perhaps a little bit more likely to come in closer to get a little look at some ladies who were out there alone. So I jokingly immediately said on the air, pick me, I'll do it. But, you know, I was just kidding. But by the end of the interview, I actually thought, okay, I volunteered. I said, okay, we'll do this. I'll get some ladies and we'll go out and try this out. Again, I didn't really know anything about Bigfoot. By the time I went out, I had seen maybe 5 or 6 episodes of Finding Bigfoot. And that was the extent of my knowledge. And we went to an area that had, in Minnesota, called 6 Mile Lake. And it's on an Indian reservation. And there had been a sighting of Bigfoot a few weeks before that on the lake. And I knew the details, but I just knew that it was by this public boat launch. Well, there was only one public boat launch listed for this lake, and it was by a bunch of cabins. And I just didn't feel like that was the correct spot, because this lake is really long and skinny. And so one side of it is all woods and no cabins at all. And the other side is cabins and with docks on the lake, you know. So I just felt like Bigfoot would be more likely to be on the side of the lake that was all woods. And one thing that I didn't mention is that I am a psychic medium, and I'm an energy healer, so I feel energy on a physical level. So when I say I can feel the energy of that, I don't mean it's giving me a good vibe. I'm meaning literally feeling a physical energy from that. And so my other idea, added to Lauren Coleman's idea of Women in the Woods, was to see if we could use our psychic abilities to put us in the location of Bigfoot a lot easier than just going out randomly looking. So using remote viewing techniques that I've used to look for missing people before, that have been successful in those types of things, we're doing that as well. So when we first went out, I got some ladies together. They were all paranormal investigators that were, friends of mine that I knew. And so they had all this ghost hunting equipment, night vision cameras that I thought would be great. But none of us had ever tried to use those things in the woods before. They don't really work so good in the woods. Mm-hmm. We found that out. So our first time out, we went out during the day on this road that goes around that 6 Mile Lake, and we would just stop at locations that I felt were interesting. And there was one place that we stopped that the energy there felt different to me. It was unlike anything I had felt before. And so I was really looking around. I didn't see anything there that would make you think that Bigfoot would be there other than this feeling. But I still copied the GPS coordinates down, and I said I wanted to return there when it got dark. And we just continued going around this lake, checking different areas, looking into muddy spots, seeing what we could find. We did find some footprints right on the gravel road at the top of the lake, where it goes over it's like a little bridge that's gravel that goes over where this inlet of water goes into the top of the lake. And there were actually footprints right into the gravel going across that bridge.
Wow.
Which was interesting because, it was hard to see them because they weren't imprinted deeply. But when we went past them and I looked back, I was like, oh, look at that. You could see this whole trackway of prints. And they were very large footprints, nothing that you could cast. But, we could definitely measure them and see many of them in this trackway. And me being the tallest person on the team, I tried to do this running, leaping next to it to see if I could match the stride, and I couldn't even come close.
Wow.
So, we were unprepared to find something because this was our first time out. We didn't have any casting material. We didn't even have a tape measure. I mean, we didn't expect to find anything really. So we were unprepared for things like that. But, we still took pictures with dollar bills, and, we were smart enough to use something that is a measurable thing that everybody knows how big that is. So a lot of times you see people taking pictures of footprints with their own boot next to it. And you're like, that's annoying to me. Because what size is your foot? We don't know. But like when you use a dollar bill or something that everybody knows how big that is, then, that's a measurable picture. So I always recommend people to do that. Dollar bills are great because if they blow away, it's okay, but I have used 5s and 10s before. And then you just really hope they don't blow away, right? So that was our day expedition that day. We went back out at night. And that spot where I thought that energy was interesting was a very interesting spot. We got out of the car and it was so dark you couldn't see anything. Nothing. There was no ambient light whatsoever. And this road that went around the lake, where we were at on the side that was without homes and cabins, it's just thick forest on both sides. And it was called Reservation Highway 20. And it's really just a gravel road that goes through the woods with no room for 2 cars to cross. One of you would have to back up. And so we just parked in the middle of the road and got out of the car, and everybody went to the back hatch to get their stuff out of the back, and I had mine ready. And one of the girls had borrowed a thermal camera from somebody. She didn't even know really how it worked other than you pull the trigger and it takes a picture. So she hands it to me, and I was excited to try it, and I started pointing it, out into the woods, and while everybody else is getting their stuff. And so I'm standing at the front of the truck, looking, you know, and I'm scanning the woods to see if I see any living things out there in a thermal. And I get it out in front of the truck, and there is someone standing there. And I was like, oh, you know, who's in front of the truck? I thought it was one of the girls, and because who else would it be?
Right. Exactly.
And I kept saying, well, who's out in front of the truck? And nobody answered. And so I kept asking that with a little bit more anxiousness in my voice. And Marlo realized something was going on, so she runs up to the front. And she looks at the screen that I'm looking at, and she sees what I'm seeing, somebody standing there. And then she looked at it directly, and she says, oh my gosh, I just saw eyes. So I look up to see, can I see eyes too? And I didn't. But then I looked back down, and I couldn't see it on the thermal anymore. Couldn't find it. And it was none of my teammates were up there. And, you know, hindsight, which I didn't even realize that day or the next day or even months later, it was hindsight for real. When we finally got a FLIR and we're really working with a really high quality FLIR thermal camera, I realized when I'm looking at things and looking at people and looking at, living things, when I look at people, their body looks different because they have clothes on. But what I saw on the thermal that night wasn't wearing clothes.
Interesting.
And, that was seriously hindsight because, there was no difference in the thermal where if you're wearing clothing, there's going to be a different color.
Right.
And that was not wearing clothing.
Huh.
So definitely something there. But when we couldn't find it on the thermal again, and we decided to walk into the woods that way because it had been on the left-hand side of the road just off the tree line. And so we decided to walk into the woods that way. So we start walking there, and we only get a few feet into the woods before rocks start coming down at us. And they're falling just 3-4 feet in front of us and bouncing. And I'm like, what is that? Because you can hear these coming through the branches of the trees. And then they're just bouncing in front of us on the ground. And, we just stop and we're looking at this stuff bouncing on the ground. And I said, is that a rock? And Marlo's like, I think that is a rock. And then here comes another one and another one. And I didn't know that Bigfoot were known to throw rocks at people. I didn't know that at that time. I mean, hey, this was our first time out, really. And I really didn't know anything. This was just like an experiment for us. And, then I found out later that Bigfoot were known for doing that. But I was just shocked at the time. I was like, what could be throwing rocks at us? There's nobody out here. No animals throw rocks. And they were about the size of a 50-cent piece to silver dollar sized rocks. And you could tell they weren't trying to hit us. That was more like, don't walk this way. And so we said, okay. And we backed up to the road and we just stood there. And one of the other girls said, hey, why don't we do one of those Bigfoot calls? I said, yeah, you go ahead and do that.
Right.
So she did. And we just all stood there very quiet and waiting to hear if we heard anything in response. And all of a sudden, so remember, we were having rocks thrown at us on the left side of the road, but all of a sudden from the right side of the road, we hear something start walking towards us. And it's bipedal. It's got 2 legs, very large footfalls. You can hear the cracking of the sticks in the trees that it's walking over, and it's coming towards us. And so we're all of us, night vision cameras, everything, pointing in the direction of the sound. We can't see a thing. Now, part of the reason we can't see a thing is because we're using equipment that these ladies use for paranormal investigations in haunted houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not lighting up the woods like it would a house, inside a house. So we're only seeing a little bit into the woods with this night vision stuff. And we can't see anything. We can't tell what's coming. It's coming, it's getting closer, it's loud, it's big. We're like, what are we doing? So all of a sudden it was like something switched, and that sound of this creature walking towards us multiplied, and now there's something coming at us from multiple directions, the same kind of sound, same kind of movement, cracking of sticks, big heavy footfalls coming towards us from all these different directions. And we didn't know what to do. We're just kind of like, what do? We can't see what it is. We were unprepared for that. So automatically we just circled up back to back facing outward, and I noticed that we just automatically did that. We hadn't made a plan for what do we do if we feel like we're in trouble. And so here we are, just facing out back to back. I thought, this is good. This is a good automatic thing that we did. And I kept trying to feel, is there danger here? Are we in danger? And I kept feeling everybody else's fear. And I'm like, okay, is there? And I'm like, I'm not sure that there's danger here. And they were really scared, and I can't blame them, really, you know. So one of them said, "Hey, Jen, do your tobacco thing." Well, I'm part Native American, and we were on an Ojibwe reservation. For those who don't recognize that, Chippewa, northern Minnesota, Ojibwe, Chippewa, and I am part Ojibwe, and so I know some of the language. And I took the tobacco in my hand and I started to do a very traditional prayer in the Ojibwe language, and I introduced myself in the language and with all the spirit names I was given in ceremony, and I started to thank the little people of the forest, and then I thanked Bigfoot. I said, Miigwech Kichisabe. And as soon as I said thank you, Bigfoot, in the Ojibwe language, everything just stopped. The movement stopped. It didn't recede. It didn't retreat. It just stopped. It vanished. It's just like they just paused. And we just stood there. And one of the girls just said, all right, well, let's go check out that spot where we found those footprints earlier today, okay? And I said, okay. And then we jumped in the car and we drove away. Because we didn't know what else to do.
Right. I don't blame you.
You know, it was funny. We were all freaked out. A lot of the girls at the time were in the car at that point, and they were saying, you know, this is way scarier than paranormal investigating. I didn't expect it would be this bad. I've never been this scared before. I don't think I really want to find Bigfoot anymore. Maybe he could just step out in front of the car and we could get a picture of him. That would be good. And so we get to the next spot, and some of them don't even want to get out of the car again.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so we got to the next spot, and we're looking around, and nothing's really going on there. And I'm like, let's go back to that spot.
Yeah.
and they're like, no, we don't want to do that. And I'm like, we're here to look for Bigfoot and interact with Bigfoot. We've got something going on there. Let's go back. So we went back. And we get out of the car, and well, some of us got out of the car, some of us did not. And they just opened the door and sat in the car. Is what they did. And then we heard something make a very loud sound, a call that sounded kind of like a barred owl, but not. It sounded like it was mimicking a barred owl, and it was way too loud, and it echoed way too much. I've never heard a barred owl be that loud before, and it was similar to, but not exact. And I grew up in the woods of Minnesota. You know, I was in the woods by myself all the time as a child, or with my mom, and you know, I'm very, very comfortable there. And I'd never been afraid of being in the woods before. So, I mean, this was just really weird for me. And, you know, so when we heard this sound, then they were like, no, we're done. We're so done. And I did hear, again, this thump, thump. Like somebody, and you could feel this thump, thump on the ground. And we're like, yeah, okay, we'll go.
Oh, then you leave.
So the next morning, and I was pumped. I wanted to be doing more, you know, and everybody else was like, no. And, and, you know, so there was a couple others that wanted to do some more, but, you know, for the most part, you know, there was not a lot of enthusiasm there anymore. And so we had breakfast in the morning, and we were like maybe 7 minutes drive away from that spot. And I'm like, let's go back out there and see if we can see any footprints in the woods where we heard the walking. And they're like, no. And I actually got kind of frustrated and, you know, mean. I got a little mean. I'm going to be honest. And I said, you know, you can't want to be a Bigfoot hunter, a Bigfoot researcher, and not go out there and look for those footprints. You can't. It's just not okay. We have to go. And I kind of bullied them into going. But then we got there, and you know, I had my own car, and everybody else was in a different car that came up from like Minneapolis area. And I don't live by Minneapolis, so we had met there. And the person who was driving the car from Minneapolis decided she wasn't going to go in the woods. And so she drove them there, but then she was like, all right, let's do a Facebook Live, and then we're leaving. From the road. So we had made like rules for us that nobody would go into the woods alone and da 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 da. So as they drive away, I get in my car and I'm like,
I know where this is going. Yes.
You know, we made a rule about not going in there by ourselves, right? But I'm like, this is stupid. I've been in the woods by myself my entire life. I grew up in the woods. This is dumb. I'm going to go look for those footprints. I don't care. So I pull my car up, you know, to where we were standing looking at, you know, the woods that night before. And I get out and I start walking into the woods towards the original sound of the walking towards us was coming from. And I could see this pathway to walk. There was like a pathway that you could walk. In, you know, in the foliage of Minnesota can get quite thick, but there was a pathway. And then the pathway seemed like it lit up this golden color. Now that's, you know, people who work with energy colored light. So it's going to be different colors of light. So, you know, here I say it lit up a golden light, you know, so energy workers know what I'm talking about. Maybe other people don't, but it's a real thing. Mm-hmm. Everybody sees energy in their subconscious mind. You can learn how to focus on it and see it consciously. And I can teach you how to do that if you ever want to.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we can see Tammy's right now behind her. It's definitely radiating outwards. So, so it is a thing, people. Just real quick, for people at home, some quick housekeeping things. We did get Facebook Live feed going, finally. So we're live. They can see, yeah, we got viewers now. So we ran into some technical difficulties behind the scenes with some boring IT talk, so I won't bore you guys with this. What they're talking about is way more exciting than what I have to offer from an IT standpoint. That's my regular job as IT. So, but for the new viewers that just joined us, up in the top left, we have, the top left of the screen, should I say, we have Jen Cruz from She-Squatchers. In the middle, it's Tammy Jackson Trichelle. Did I say it right? Did I say it wrong again?
Yep.
Okay, I'm done. Somebody else announce it, please. This is Tammy from now on. From the She-Squatchers. And Jenna was supposed to join us, but she wasn't feeling too well, so we'll get her on in hopefully another episode if we can, you know, coerce them to come back after our technical difficulties. Probably not, though, right? No, I'm teasing. We'll have them back.
She loves you guys.
Awesome. Feeling's mutual, so awesome. So, okay, now that that's all been said, keep continuing with your story. Did you go back into the woods?
I was walking into the woods, and I could see the pathway, and it was lighting up this golden color. And I'm walking, and I can see there's an X. There was sticks that were long, really long, many feet, that were stuck into the ground in an X formation, and the path went right underneath the X. And so I'm like walking towards it, and all of a sudden I hear in my head, and it was a memory, but it was so loud, like somebody yelled at me. And it was the voice of one of my friends who used to yell at me not to step inside a fairy ring because they could take you and never bring you back.
Okay. Yep.
And I thought, well, that was odd that I just would, you know, have that memory like scream in my head. That's never happened to me before. And so I just stopped. And then I realized that I felt like I was in a trance-like state. And I was being called to walk this path. Literally, I was like, Jennifer, like, come walk this path. And that kind of scared me. I'm like, who's calling me to come this way? And that freaked me out a little bit. So I ran back to my car and got in and shut the door. And I'm like, okay, I feel better now. And I still want to go look. But, you know, I was feeling kind of scared at that point because I wasn't fully in control of myself, and I hadn't really felt like that had happened to me before. And So I opened my window and I still felt okay. And then I pulled my car up just so as close as I could get to it. Now the woods is right up there on the road, so it's not like I'm not far from it. It's right there. And I started taking pictures. And I didn't look at the pictures right away, so it wasn't until later that I saw that the woods, you could see the path. You could see the X, you could see the path go underneath it, and behind that X, there was in the forest, there was circles within circles within circles within circles within circles.
Nice.
Many pictures in a row. And because I'm part Native American and very interested in petroglyphs and pictographs, the old ancient carvings of the Native peoples, I recognized that when they draw that symbol of circles within circles within circles, or spirals, they're talking about portals. And for people that don't know what portals are, they're supposedly a thing that you can walk through and enter into a different dimension or a different place, or travel from one physical location to another location instantaneously. And I had heard that Bigfoot could do that, but now I'm seeing this in the woods, and I was walking straight for those. And I didn't see them with my naked eye. I was just seeing the energy and the path. So at that point, I left, and I went back a couple weeks later with one of the other girls and checked out the place, but it didn't feel the same then. It was different. And then we did find that location where the boat launch was. It was a private public boat launch that only the locals knew about. And there had been a house on that side, but it had been torn down, and it was that house's boat launch that the local people would launch their canoes from. And we were within a quarter mile of that spot.
Wow.
When we had that interaction, we were within a quarter mile of that spot.
Interesting.
So when we found that location the second time that we went there, and it was just me and another girl, and we had brought her husband along and another gentleman. And when we were there, I was like, it just feels different. Is it because the guys are here? So we had them drop us off and drive away. And we had walkie-talkies and to call them to come back for us when we were ready. And we walked down deeper into the woods and down to the water, and where that interaction had been. It was an aggressive Bigfoot that had been tracking this man in a canoe at dark. He had been fishing in a canoe, and he was native, and he was coming into shore, and there was a Bigfoot standing in the water up to his knees in the shore, and he kept aggressively coming towards the canoe. And I think that he was trying to give him the fish, but the guy was scared. He didn't come in. He just kept going down the shore, and they kept following him. And then when he didn't come home, his family went out there looking for him. They're like, well, he should have been home by now. So they went out there and they started honking the horn and flashing their lights, and that scared it into the woods. And he watched where it ran into the woods. And so they went out there the next day, and they found all these footprints in the deep mud. It was really awesome. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that was where we were at. And so when they'd gone back out there, the guys had parked, down a ways, but they could see when we would turn on our lights, they could kind of see where we were at. And her husband said after the fact that there was a green light following us above the treetops. And he said it followed you for like 35 minutes. And I said, why didn't you tell us that? He goes, well, I figured you saw it. And I'm like, we didn't see it. But he said it was following you. But it was just above the trees, and it was this bright green light, like the same color green as like a traffic light when it's green. It's like if you pluck that light out, it was like that was following us above the treetops. So that was interesting. And later on, in talking to the local people, they said that when they often see those green lights, and the locals had a saying that when the green lights appear, Bigfoot is near, because they usually see the lights and then they see Bigfoot. So that was interesting to find that out, that we were being stalked by this green light. And and when we were down looking at the area where the Bigfoot encounter had happened with that gentleman in the canoe. So that was our investigation to that spot. 2 weeks, a couple of weeks after we had initially been there, and I was having trouble with some of the other ladies that were on the team, and in the end we just decided to split up. And I took She-Squatchers and went one way, and they did their own thing. And when I first got back from the very first trip out, I told Jenna. And to be honest with you, I didn't tell her before that because I was embarrassed that I was out looking for Bigfoot, because I didn't believe in Bigfoot. So I was embarrassed to tell people that I was going looking for Bigfoot. And I'm just going to be honest about that, as I didn't really think Bigfoot was real. But after that encounter and that experience, I was convinced and I was hooked, and I just wanted to do more of it. And I was so excited about it. And Jenna was like, "Why didn't you tell me? I want to go." So she was joined up right away. And then I asked Tammy too, but it just didn't work out at that time for her to join with us right away. And so she came on later on after. And so then the three of us have just been an awesome triangle of girls together, because we've all got those abilities. And Tammy's really, really good at seeing auras. I mean, I have to work at seeing that. That's not my primary gift, but Tammy's like, boom, they're right there for her.
Wow.
So, so Tammy, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what you think and all that.
Well, my story is not as long as yours. No. No, when I came on, they'd asked me, and I just said, yes, I'm going to do this, and I want adventure, and I want things to do, and this sounds exciting, and I love adrenaline, so it was right up my alley. So, since I've been with them, we have gotten some great footage, had some great experiences. We all three are psychics, and we all have our own gifts, and we use our gifts to map out where Bigfoot's going to be, wherever in the area that we are going. And we always look to see if we can find Bigfoot on the map. And then we gather our gear and we go into the car and we go find Bigfoot. And we've had a very high success rate doing it that way. And it's an adventure. It's fun. Not scary at all. I know that a lot of people, you don't know what you're going to do when you come face to face with the Bigfoot. Some people are scared and run away, and some people, like us three, are like, "Oh, did you get that on film?" So,
Yep.
We enjoy it. We have a good time. We enjoy each other. We mesh well together, and our energies feed off of each other, and it brings a good experience. So I like it.
Very cool. Now, you guys say you're all like psychic, intuition, and all that stuff when you use that. Do you use mainly that, or do you guys use other methods? I mean, what do you tend to lean towards? 'Cause I read some of your stuff. You guys use the I'm going to butcher this too. I've been butchering stuff all night. You guys use the geographic remote viewing as a tool. How does that work for you? I mean, can you explain to our viewers what it is, if you want to? If it's, I don't want to tell you too much of your guys' secrets and everything. Now all of a sudden everybody's a Bigfoot hunter. So, if you want to talk
I
about
don't think everybody is going to be able to do the remote
No.
viewing, so.
not exactly.
So it's okay. Geographic remote viewing is my terminology, because remote viewing itself, there's a technical term for it called controlled remote viewing, which was actually developed by the United States government. And they've used it for spying, and it's very, very scientific, and they can measure someone's success rate. And it requires somebody to be a moderator. So you need a third party that's asking you questions. You're not aware of what target you're looking at. And it wouldn't work well for the situation that we want to use it for. So when I say geographic remote viewing, what I'm doing is I'm looking at Google Earth, Google Maps. So I'm looking at satellite imagery of a location from above. And I will zoom in and out, and I'm asking questions as I'm doing that. I'm asking, is there Bigfoot here? Is there any Bigfoot evidence here that we could find? And what I will see on the satellite image at that time will change if there is something there. So I will start seeing something there. Other people may not see that, but that's how I'm tapping into that location and I can drop a pin on it and get a GPS coordinates where I can take myself right there to that spot. And so I started showing Jenna and Tammy how I was doing that and found that they could do it too. So what we started to do is I'll look at a spot and I'll drop a pin like next to something I'm seeing. I won't drop it right on it because that would like be right where on top of whatever I'm seeing. So I'll drop it next to it. And I'll send them the GPS coordinates and say, hey, what are you seeing here? And it's fun to see them come back with the same thing. Like there was one spot Tammy and I were looking at to go visit, and I dropped a pin and I sent it to her. And I said, do you see anything here? And what I was seeing was a Bigfoot next to a mountain lion, like they were together. And I had never seen that before. And she's like, I'm seeing a Bigfoot and a mountain lion. And I'm like, yes.
Wow. That's awesome.
So, I mean, we're able to back each other up with what we're finding. And so when we went to that particular spot, we didn't actually go in there because, you know, I'm definitely not going to play with a mountain lion. But I guess we call them mountain lions or cougars up here. And, you know, in that particular area of Minnesota, I had grown up around there, and I did hear what I thought was a mountain lion roar at one time when I was 17 years old out there. And then I was a little freaked out after that.
Wow.
And because, you know, they always said, we don't have mountain lions here anymore. Well, I'm like, I'm really sure I heard one.
Right. Sounds like Kansas. That's what they say here, too. They don't exist.
So, so that's interesting. But when we are out looking for Bigfoot, when we go looking, we will look at the woods remotely first with that Google satellite imagery, and we will drop pins and keep track of GPS coordinates that we want to go check out. And so, like, there was one example where I had a native man on my reservation came to me. He was an elder. Him and his wife had wanted to talk to me when they heard that I was looking for Bigfoot. And they said, you know, our granddaughters live with us. Do you know where we live? And I said, yeah, I kind of know where you live. And they said, well, the kids were playing in the woods behind our house, and they came home and said that they found this really cool fort, and they were really excited about it. And so the more they talked about this cool fort, he's like, well, I want you to show me this fort. So the kids took him out there, and we're talking about 9-year-old girls. Okay? And kids took him out there, and he says that something had pulled 2 trees out of the ground, roots and all, and teepeed them upside down with the roots in the air.
Wow.
Together. And he said, you walk underneath that. And you know, I've heard this before from people that Bigfoot will do that. But then other people will say, well, loggers sometimes do that just for fun with their equipment. This is deep on the reservation. It's a closed reservation. There are no loggers. Okay, so the only people back there who are gathering firewood at all are the native people, and this man actually made those trails back in the woods himself.
Wow.
And they don't have big equipment back there. You can barely drive a car back there. So that you know, that was something did this by hand. And he says you walk underneath that and you keep going, and then until you come to the Hogan looking structure. And I'm like, what does that look like? And he says, well, it kind of looks like a wigwam, but it's more rectangular shaped. And it was basically trees that were stacked and weaved together. And he said it had a doorway, but no door. And, you know, it was all these trees that were weaved together into this structure, and it had a roof. And, you know, if natives had built that, they would have tied it together. They like to use twine or red ribbons when they make anything out of wood like that. But this was no twine, no ribbons. This was all just weaved together very articulately. And he says, you walk.
Oh.
Where'd you go?
Frozen.
I think she's telling too many secrets, Dave.
And
Cut her off. There she is. You froze for a minute.
What happened?
You froze when you were talking.
Froze? Okay. What part did you hear?
Something about you walked into the woods alone. No, I'm kidding. You're like, that was a long time ago. No, you were talking about the structure, the rectangular structure. I don't want to say it because I can't pronounce it. The Hogan. There you go.
Yep, the Hogan looking structure.
Okay.
It was the trees that were stacked and weaved together, not tied or tied with twine or ribbon at all. And so he says you walk in the door, and there was quite a big area in there that was cleaned out on the ground that quite a few of them could have laid down in. And he said at the back of it, there was a hole in the ground that went down into this tunnel/cave area. And when his grandkids had found it, they went down in there. And when he saw that, well, he didn't go down in there. He was freaked out when he saw this. He instantly knew this was made by Bigfoot. There's no other explanation for it. And he was freaked out. And he says, even if Bigfoot isn't using that structure anymore, something else could have moved in there. Right. And my girls went down into that. What if something was down there? We could have lost them. And they're very traditional Native people. And for anybody that's really familiar with that, like I was taught growing up that I'm home in the woods. I'm not alone in the woods. I'm surrounded by my relatives, the trees, and the animals. So even if there's not another person there, I'm with my relatives, so you're safe. And for him to start teaching his grandkids to stay away and to be afraid of the woods there was interesting. You know, that was unusual. That was new. But he's like, don't you ever go out there again. If you ever find anything like that again, you stay far away from it and you tell me right away. But you never go in it. You don't go near it. You just come tell me. And, he's cited, since then, he's actually seen Bigfoot in the woods since then. So we decided we were going to go up there and look at that spot. So the weekend that we were able to go, they were actually having a powwow up there, and he is a singer on a drum. So he couldn't go out there with us because he was at the powwow. So we went to the powwow, and he gave me directions on how to find it. Well, I knew where he lived. So I had remote viewed the woods all around back there, like miles and miles, because I was really excited to go up there and find this. And so I had marked spaces that I had seen when I was asking, is there a Bigfoot here? I saw all of a sudden this giant Bigfoot face that looked really aggressive and mean, and I was scared of it. And I was like, okay, but about 200 feet away from that, there was another area that lit up in response to me asking if there was any Bigfoot evidence that we could collect, and this whole area lit up. It was a very large area. And I was like, okay, there looked to be between those two spots, right in the middle of them, it looked to be like a trail. And I was like, I hope that's a drivable trail because that's pretty far back in the woods. And, but I wouldn't know until we got there because it wasn't a marked road. It was just visually you could see from above that it was a trail, But I marked those two spots as something that I would like to check out. Well, so we went out in the woods, and they kind of had, when I had his directions, I'm writing them down. And he's like, you go to this spot and, you go into the woods back behind this and you keep going until this. And then you turn right there, but he pointed left. And I'm like, okay, am I turning right or am I turning left? He's like, yeah, you turn right there. And he pointed left. Huh. And I'm like, and he meant for us to walk this trail because that's how he would go back there. And it was 96 degrees that day, 95 or 96 degrees, and it was really hot. And up in northern Minnesota, that's really hot for us. And, survival of the fittest up here because it gets really cold in the wintertime. So that's really, really hot for us. And the girl that was with us that day, she was the tribal member that was with us because you can't be out there without a tribal member. I am now a tribal member, so I don't need to have somebody else go along. I've been accepted in the tribe as a hard carrion. So, yay. But she wasn't feeling well from the heat. And so she was just going to stay in the car. So we decided we're going to drive it. Well, we couldn't find it with his directions. And, I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. So let's just go to the spots where I had marked GPS coordinates that I had seen something. So we rerouted ourselves to go to that, and I've got my GPS open, and I'm watching us as the blue dot on my little phone going along until we get to the spot that I had marked, that was between those two areas where I'm seeing the aggressive Bigfoot male and then the Bigfoot evidence that had lit up. And we parked there, say, okay, stop the car right in the middle between these two spots. And I'm like, if we get out to the right, we go straight out, that's where that aggressive male, I see that aggressive male's territory. And if we get out to the left, within 100 feet, we're gonna find some Bigfoot evidence that we can collect. I'm not sure what that was. I didn't ask too many questions about that. I was really, really focused on that aggressive looking male. And so we get out of the car. Jenna's not ready. So she's getting her stuff ready, and I'm ready. You know, and my whole strategy at that point was to jump out of the car and like rush to the spot, because don't give them any forewarning that we're there. You know,
Right.
Rush to the spot with your camera. It's daytime. Okay. And you know, this was the first time we really did the remote viewing to go to a spot. And Jenna didn't believe in remote viewing, and I didn't know that until that day. Because she was like, da, 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 and I'm like, let's go. And she didn't, when I said there's something there, I knew for a fact that there was something there, because I'd been doing this for years, and I tried and true. It's always true. You know, very specific things I will see in a remote view when I was using it to look at, you know, for missing people or at paranormal locations. I could see what was happening there, and tell the groups what was going on before they would even go there. And I was seeing very specific things that would never be true any other time. Like, I was like, how could that even be true? You know, but it was like, well, one time I looked at a paranormal site that somebody was supposed to be investigating, and I saw human remains in the house that were not cremation. They were not buried. The people knew that they were there, but they did not kill this person. And I kept saying, is it cremation? No. There's a human skeleton, like, really, there's a dead body in the house. And I'm like, how could that be true? And but they had purchased a mummy at a museum that went out of business. There was
wow.
a dead body in the
There's
house.
a real
that
dead
they
body.
killed and wasn't
Oh my
cremated.
gosh.
You know, so it was like, I don't even think I want to tell them that, but I'm seeing this. So, and I trust what I see. So, you know, here it is. And they were like, wow. Because they didn't think that would be true either when I told that to them. Like, I don't know. That's what I'm seeing. So,
Wow.
I mean, it's always been true. When I see something, it's always been true. So when I was there getting out of the car, I'm like, let's go. Something's here. Let's go. And she's not ready. So I started just looking into the woods to the right, to where I had seen the aggressive male. I wasn't going to go that way, but I thought, I just want to see if I can see anything just looking that way. And took a step in, and rocks came down. Now it's daytime, and I'm looking around going, where are the rocks coming from? Now I can see stuff because it's daytime. And all of a sudden, Nikki says, oh, I think I see something back there. And she's still in the car, but she's got her window open, and she's looking to the left where that Bigfoot evidence was that I said. There was Bigfoot evidence over there. And so I'm like, duh, don't go towards the aggressive male. Go where the evidence is. What are you thinking, Jen? So I go around to the other side of the car, and I start looking into the woods. I'm like, come on, Jenna. And she's like, yeah. And she's, dinking around. And it seemed like it took forever, and it probably really wasn't forever, but to me it was. And Tammy's laughing. So I start seeing something moving back there in the woods. And now I'm like, oh my God. So I start walking in there, and I'm like, Jenna, come on. And, I did get kind of mean, and they're like, now. Because I was like, I'm walking towards it. There's something back here, and I'm going by myself, and I didn't want to do that.
Right.
And,
not this time.
And yeah, I didn't want to go by myself. So, she's coming along, and all of a sudden we come upon this structure, and it was like this tower that was 2-3 stories tall. That was trees that were pulled out of the ground, teepeed together. And then there was foliage that was weaved together between them into like levels that you could climb and like hang out in.
Oh, wow.
And so we're seeing this, and we're like, wow. And the part of the tower that you could climb into, I mean, it didn't start until like 5.5 feet off the ground. Underneath that was just darkness inside of it. And when we walked up towards it, the bushes in front of it went whoosh, and start moving. So like something had been in there, and we're walking up to it. And so I've got my eyes on that dark spot inside there. Like, is something going to pop out of there? And I'm kind of trying to stay away from it. But then there's these sticks in the ground that are in her way that we're pulling out and moving to get around to the other side of it. And it wasn't until after, when I looked at our video, that I saw that the sticks that we were moving to get around it were actually weaved, like they were placed in the ground and like were weaved fence area that were fenced it in. And we're moving it, trying to get in there. And we didn't even realize it was a fence because we were so focused on this tower that we weren't even looking at what we were doing. You know, we were just making room to get past it. And behind that, it was like, so the tower area, it would be like the width of a Walmart aisle. And then it was long and skinny behind it. And so it was shorter. The structure behind it was shorter. And that was like more of the Hogan structure was attached to it and behind it. And it was really long, like an aisle.
Wow.
And this was not the same structure that the kids had found. This was not the same one. This was a different one. And so, I mean, it was similar, though. It was stacked trees. They were weaved together. It had a roof. Jenna was like, "Want me to go inside there?" And I'm like, "You want to go inside there?" She's like, "Yeah." Now I'm not talking the dark part of the tower. We're on the side now where there's a doorway that you can go in and you can see into it. And you can see that there's nobody in there. So, you know,
Jenna goes inside.
Jenna goes inside. Yeah, and it was quite the experience and very fun. And there was all kinds of trees that had been pulled out of the ground and like shoved into the ground in like clumps that were like making blind, so you couldn't see this from a distance. If you were coming through the woods, you couldn't see it, because I kept trying to back up, trying to get like the whole thing in my camera shot, and I couldn't get far enough away and still see it. So I had decided, after we explored it a little bit, that we were losing light, and it gets darker in the forest quicker than it does outside of the forest.
Yep.
And so I'm like, it's getting dark. We gotta get this better here. So I said, "Jenny, you stay here." She had a GoPro camera on her forehead that was blinking a light. I said, "You just stand right here, and I'm gonna go over there, and I'm going to get you next to this so that we can see how big it is."
Mm-hmm.
And Jenna in her 5'5"-ness, you know, standing there. That was our measurement.
Right.
And and I start to walk away from her, and all of a sudden I start to hear rocks coming through the trees and like thumping. And I'm like, I stopped. I'm like, was that a rock? And then I hear another one. I'm like, yep, that was a rock. And so I'm like, okay, they don't want me to walk this way. We're not alone back here. And I'm like, okay, so what if I go this way? So I turned the other way because I still wanted to get away and get this shot. So I walked the other way. So I go around that whole area, and no rocks were coming. So I was like, all right, we're good. But so I'm taking video of this, and Jenna's standing there, and I can barely see her, but you can see this light flashing on her. So that like really helped me identify where is she at. And then I could see really how big this thing was, and I was like, holy crap, that's way bigger than I thought.
Oh,
and then I was like, okay, now we're not alone in here, and they're between us.
Right.
where I was and where Jenna was. And I knew that the trail that we drove in on where the car was parked was parallel to where I was. You know, I wasn't any further into the woods than Jenna was. If I just beelined it towards the trail, I was just as far away from it than she was. And I just all of a sudden felt like we have overstayed our welcome. We're not welcome here anymore. I suddenly started to feel afraid. And I was like, Jenna, go to the trail. I'm going to the trail right here. You know, go to the trail. We need to go now. And she's like, okay. So I start barreling towards the trail, and I realize that there's these weaved trees there again. And I'm having to move them and bust right through them to get to the trail. And when I realized that this was also over there, and I was out loud saying, animals would never go this way because they only take the path of least resistance, and this is not it.
Right.
Because I'm having to like break through and move and, you know, trying to get through there. And I realized these were placed here, and this is a fence I'm busting through. And the more I realized that, the more scared I got. Like, I need to get out of here, you know, because I'm now by myself over here. Jenna's over there. And so as soon as I got to the trail, I felt much better because I'm like beelining for the car, you know. But yeah, that was really fun for us. But that was when Jenna started to believe in remote viewing, because she's like, it's like you knew there was something there. I'm like, I told you there was something there. That's what I said. Did I say that? Well, yeah, but you know, when she tells the story of it, she's like, it's like she knew. I'm like, I told you it was there.
That's
I
amazing.
didn't know what it was. I just said Bigfoot evidence we could collect.
Wow.
So that was just one example of that. And then, you know, we've had many others, you know, where another time when we were up there, Nikki was driving the car, and we were going about 55 miles an hour, and I felt the energy that physical energy that I felt at that one spot where I wanted to go back to that first time, that energy that I had never felt before. All of a sudden I felt that in the car, and it pulled me to the right, and I'm like, stop the car. There's something in the woods back there. We need to get in that woods. And so we did. We turned around, we went back, and we found a way to get back there. And behind the woods there was a gravel pit that we didn't know was there. And plain as day, boom, there's footprints, fresh footprints that were going up the steep gravel hill. And we took lots of pictures, and we tried to cast it, but casting in a gravel pit is very difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, didn't turn out at all, really. And we've gotten some good advice from others of how we would do that differently next time, but it just didn't turn out, you know, in a gravel pit. But the footprints went all the way to the top, and it was so steep that the girls, Jenna and Nikki, tried to climb up next to it, and they were sliding back down. They were on all fours. But these footprints were the smallest that was 8, you know, some of them were 22 or 24 inches, but I think it was sliding because the smallest print was 18 inches long with 5 toes. And this walked all the way up without putting its hands down. And it was definitely not a bear. And I showed the pictures and video of that to Bobo from Finding Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, when he saw the steepness of that hill and the footprints, he's like, that had to be a Squatch. That couldn't be a bear. That couldn't be a human. That had to be a Squatch.
Wow.
So he was excited. He really wanted to go up to that spot too. So that was just a time where we're driving, and I felt the energy, and we followed that. So that's kind of some of the ways that we're using our senses to locate where to look for Bigfoot. But like, we went to the Tennessee Bigfoot conference a couple years ago, and they had a group that signed up to go out looking for Bigfoot with us and Matthew Delph from MECRO, Mountain Empire Cryptid Researchers Organization. And Matthew chose the location because he's from down there. And I kept telling him I need the GPS coordinates to look at the spot. You know, he didn't quite understand how we do that. So he didn't give me the coordinates. And I'm just like, it's like walking in blind. I just don't do that. And, you know, I happened to have like a really bad case of bronchitis at the time. And this was on a mountaintop. And we're like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be I can barely breathe. Maybe I shouldn't go. So they went with him in the group. And I stayed behind. I said, girls, send me the GPS coordinates when you're there.
That's one way to do it.
So they did. They're sending them to me. And I'm back at the hotel remote viewing while they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found a bunch of stuff.
Wow.
And so I'm like, oh, I want to go out there now. And so they came back. We had dinner, and we decided that the 3 of us girls and Matthew would go back out there after dark without the group, because they didn't want us taking people from the group out there after dark because of, you know, liability reasons. Someone could fall off the mountain. You know?
Yeah. Makes sense.
And so the 3 of us and Matthew went out there together, and we drove and parked right to the spot where I said I was seeing Bigfoot. They had marked the spot. And this, for the first time ever, I had not tried this before. When we parked the car, I pulled my phone out and I asked, is there Bigfoot here right now? And all of a sudden I saw one 30 feet from the car.
Oh my.
And I'm like, 30 feet from the car, 30 feet from the car. Tammy grabs the FLIR. It was Jenna's FLIR. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know how to use the buttons either. Jenna usually turns it on to record and then hands it to me. And, and, you know, so it's on. Tammy's looking at it, but it's not recording. And Tammy's like, oh my God. Okay, Tammy, tell.
Okay. So, you know all the talk that there is about us being prepared, cameras on, everything, you know, right when you get out from the car. Yeah, that didn't happen. So, I had it, and I had it turned on, and I pointed where Jen had said to look, and there on the FLIR was a Bigfoot, 30 feet from me on the FLIR.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I record? And I'm trying to push the buttons, and I can't find it. It's so dark. There's no light. I can't see. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I record? And they're still getting out of the car, not listening to Tammy.
I was listening to Tammy. I didn't know how to work it. So I was like looking at Jenna going, Jenna.
And finally I'm like, how do I record? He's right there. And Jenna's like, oh. And so she goes over and she pushes the button and hands it to me. And we got 13 minutes of footage on the FLIR of Bigfoot up against a tree. We couldn't really tell if he was sitting there. I thought he was sitting there. But before it started to record, I'm sitting here watching him. He knows that I see him, and he knows that I'm there, and I know that he's there. And he's sitting there, and he's lounging, and he's putting his arm up like this, and all this long hair is hanging down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that, you know?
Wow.
And so when we finally got it to record, he wasn't doing that, of course. But 13 minutes, he was like doing something with his hands. I couldn't tell if he was like, you know, like skinning an animal or doing something on the ground in front of him anyway. But he didn't try to run away. We didn't try to approach him any closer. It's like we just respected each other's distance, and you know, he was okay with me recording him, and I was okay with him being there.
Wow.
It was so exciting, and I just, you know, I'd pan off to the trees and then pan back, you know, just to make sure that I was getting the right colors and everything on there onto him, and it was so exciting. And he just sat there and let me record him, and we got a lot of footage on there. You can see the difference between like me. I handed the camera off to Jenna, and or was it you? Okay, or Jen. And I walked in front of the camera, and you can see my hair. We were doing what, white hot or black hot?
We were doing white hot.
Okay.
No, black hot, because on black hot, the skin, the skin temperature would look black or gray, but hair shows up as stark white.
Yes.
So it was this stark white thing.
This guy looked white. The Bigfoot looked white. But when I walked in front of the camera, my hair was white, but my skin was black.
Wow.
And Matthew also walked in front of the camera. So, you know, I looked around at other things, you know, while I was recording, looked at the rocks, you know, doing the temperatures and trying to gauge temperatures if anything else was over there. But yeah, the only thing that was the same color as it was my hair when I walked across in front of the camera. So it was so exciting. That was the best footage. I'm so proud of that.
So how about, like, as far as size comparison, Tammy versus what was caught on film? Can you guys tell a huge difference?
Well, we were in Tennessee at that moment, and we were scheduled to leave to come back to Minnesota the next morning. So we didn't get to go back out there during the day.
Oh,
but
okay.
Matthew went out there during the day to check it out. And he said that spot where it was at, where we thought it was sitting, he said it's actually a drop off. And it was more like he thinks it was standing there, and because it was doing something with its hands, and whatever it was working with was black, dark color. So it had a body temperature, that whatever it was working with had the body temperature. So we think it might have been skinning an animal.
Oh, wow.
And it was standing there using that shelf area as like a countertop.
Oh my
So it was standing on the hillside so that's why we're only seeing it from like, just above the hips up.
So if you had to venture a guess, how tall would you say this creature was? Just a rough estimate. If you guys could put your best estimate on it.
Well, if it was only half of him that was showing, He looked rather large, so I would say he had to probably at least be 8 feet tall.
Oh my God.
Because it looked like he was like 4 feet tall, just sitting there.
That's crazy. That's
And
incredible.
you can look at that video. It's on our YouTube channel. It's called Tennessee Bigfoot Night Expedition, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I did grab some screen grabs from your actual YouTube channel. Do you mind if I show some of it right here? Because some of the stuff you just talked about, I'm like, that was great. I just got lucky, I guess. So, one of them happens to be the structure you talked about, the one that Jenna stood inside. That
Yep.
tall. I don't know how tall you said it was gigantic. So let me show the people at home real quick here. I didn't get the Tennessee one. I wish I would have known that. I would have grabbed that too, but I just kind of guessed. Luckily. Let's see what I got here. 1 second here. So this first one I'm going to show is the actual structure. The viewers at home, they'll see it here in just a second. Maybe. I know how to do this.
Well, while you do that, I'm just going to say, people have asked us why did you approach the Bigfoot that you saw in that thermal? And we're like, no, we didn't. And, it never even occurred to me to go closer to it. And I asked Tammy, did it occur to you? And she's like, no. And Matthew still, he felt like all of us felt the same, that we were satisfied with this. So,
Wow.
Yep. There's the structure. That's from the side. And right there on I could point at it, but you can't see my finger.
Yeah, laser pointer.
Kind of where the darker spot is on the left, that's kind of like the doorway, the opening. And everything to the right of that is like weaved trees and stuff that were weaved together. So, when Jenna was inside that, you couldn't see her. And in this particular video, I was looking at something. There had been something digging in the ground, and you could see it literally like fingers had been digging in the ground. And I was looking at that, and I turned around and Jenna was gone. And I was like, oh, Jenna, where are you? I can't see you anymore. And she's like, I'm right here. And she could see me. She was behind it, and I couldn't see her.
Oh my gosh. Which I do have that picture too, with Jenna inside of it or behind it. I think you can set it up here. Let me get that.
There she's standing in front of it.
Oh, in front of it?
So she's standing. I've circled her, and you can see the red light on her.
Oh, yeah.
Her forehead. That's her GoPro. So that is Jenna's entirety standing there, and you can see that at least 3 times taller than her, there's a structure leaning to the right.
That is crazy. And that's the reason why I knew how tall she was, because I saw this picture earlier. I wasn't psychic or intuitive. I just happened to see this from your actual website and from the YouTube channel as well. This is where some of the stuff is from, the footage, the pictures. So the viewers at home, make sure you go check it out. Their website is www.She-Squatchers.com. Is there a hyphen in She-Squatchers?
Not on the link, no.
Okay, couldn't remember. So yeah, so that's just some of it. And then I think this is the picture you had shown to us at.
Just to let you know.
Yeah.
She's taller than me.
I thought she might be.
Oh, just to answer your question from earlier.
Yeah.
I am 5'2".
Oh my God.
On a good day.
I don't know you well enough to pick on you yet.
You can do it. You heard me. So.
It just depends on what shoes I'm wearing that day. How tall I am.
How tall he combs his hair up. He may be 7 foot. He may be 5 something. You never know.
We're still
We're at a
master
platform.
Yeah. So this is I remember you showing me this picture at the KC Paracon when I was just talking to you off the side there. Is this the picture you're talking about you showed to actual Bobo from
Yes.
Bigfoot, Finding Bigfoot?
Yep.
Okay.
And that Jenna took that picture from the top of the hill, and that little black spot at the very top of the picture, that's me standing at the bottom with the camera.
Oh, God. That's insane.
And then Nikki, that's her foot in her hand. She's
Oh, okay.
sitting next to the footprints on the hill.
Wow.
And yeah.
That's
yeah.
fairly steep, yeah. So this thing just walked up the side of it.
Yep.
That's incredible.
And you can see kind of in the comparison of Nikki's hand and Nikki's foot, you can see the comparison to the size of those footprints.
Yeah.
You know, just with that picture.
Wow, that's insane. Man. Yeah, those things are, I mean, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, whatever you want to call them, they're phenomenal creatures. I mean, the fact they can just walk in places that most humans can't. They can cover a lot of footage ground-wise, across. There's always stories about their stride, being 5 to whatever X amount of feet between footsteps versus, natural human. They can't even manipulate that or can't even imitate it, basically. It's incredible.
Very much so. And so that we were really excited about that find. And the fact that I felt it at 55 miles an hour, that was really cool.
That is awesome. Always go with your gut feeling, people. People at home.
Yeah.
It's always true. Well, at least in your guys' case it is.
So, I mean, I'm not, Tammy and Jenna are hardier than I am, but I'm not, I'm older now. I'm not going to go into the woods for 3 weeks solid and do the primitive cramping. That's not me. She will. She'll do it. Here's me. I want to go. I want to find the Bigfoot before I get there and just like, surprise, we're here. And that's our strategy. So, I think it's been working quite well for us.
That is awesome. I did capture a video. I didn't capture. Let me rephrase that. I got a video from your website I want to ask you about. It's because it's something that we've seen, and I want to see what your thoughts are, how it ties in with Bigfoot, if it does, and also what exactly this is. We call them ghost lights, spirit lights, whatever you want to call it. You guys are out on, I think it's just Jenna and yourself are on this location, and you're seeing something to the, I think you call it a unilocker. I can't say it. Unilocker?
Unocular.
Unocular, there it is. I don't have a Minnesota or North Dakota accent. I can't say it. So, which I'm surprised by tonight. I only heard your accent a couple of times tonight. So.
Oh yeah, you betcha.
Minnesota, eh? So, I'm very, very proud of you for masking it. That's pretty good.
I wasn't trying to mask
I know.
it, but okay.
I remember that's what I told you at the Paracon. I started imitating your accent before you were even doing it. I'm like, Minnesota. So, I'm kidding.
Well, if I had been talking about the boat, you might have been able to catch that.
Oh my gosh. So this video at home is, you guys titled it Strange Lights Using the Unocular. It was caught from about 5 years ago. You guys caught it.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and play the video for the viewers at home. I just want your take on it, and then we'll talk about it here in just a second. If I can get this queued up without destroying everything.
Oh no.
Can't make any promises. Okay, here we go. And it should start playing any second now, or not.
So Unocular is a night vision camera that can see far away.
Oh, okay. So like binocular, just one eye.
It's one eye, and it's so bright that it hurts you.
Oh my
When you
gosh.
take it away, you cannot see. It literally hurts your eye. So
Burn
usually
your retina.
one of us is using one of those devices, and the other one is just eyeballing.
Oh, okay.
Because you're literally blind when you take it away. So usually one of us has the unocular or a monocular. The monocular is the same type of device; it just sees closer. But we were looking at a location that was far from us. It was in a wetland that we couldn't get permission to go onto because it's a marshy bog, and the landowner said that we could fall through the bog and drown.
Gotcha.
So we didn't give permission to go back there. But we were there because we had somebody reported a Bigfoot walking from one set of trees to the next set of trees in the middle of this marshy bog that they could see from the road.
Oh wow.
And so because we couldn't go out there, we couldn't get permission to go out there, we decided that, hey, we can see pretty far with this unocular at night. Let's just go park on the road at night, really late when there's no traffic, and just see if we can see anything back there with this. And
Gotcha.
so that was what we were doing. We were looking for Bigfoot.
Gotcha. Okay. Now I figured out how to play video. I'm gonna go ahead and play it right now. See that? Is it playing? There it is.
I can't find it on this thing. I found it.
So at that point, I saw that with my eyes, and Jenna was using the unocular. I said, Jenna, do you see those lights? And she looked and she found the lights. She's like, yeah. So,
It's moving.
and logically, I always try to find a logical explanation for it. I'm like, is there a road behind that? And there wasn't.
Yeah.
And we knew that there couldn't be a person back there because they don't let people go back there.
No, there's two. But no, one's on the bottom, one's on the top. Can't see any of them now. I'm getting it on tape.
It's almost like it's showing back
Now it's
Oh,
just from the bottom.
through the trees.
Can you see it? There was two. It's moving through.
So when we turned off the camera, then it was weird because the car lit up. Boom. The whole car lit up. The car had been off. The windows were open. And we'd been sitting there on the side of the road with the car turned off for quite some time. All of a sudden, I was in the driver's seat. Jenna was in the passenger seat out the window with the unocular. And the lights in the car came on, off, like all the lights, and it was click, 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 click.
Wow.
And we're like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
And Jenna's like, did you do that? I'm like, no. But there had been a flash of light right at the car right before that. And I was like, all right, that's just, we both felt like that light did that or something. So we're like, yeah, let's get out of here. That freaked us out. So we left.
Wow.
But yeah, because I'm like, I'm not looking for some close encounters tonight, I guess. I don't want to be abducted.
So, do you think, I mean, yes, it's a strange light phenomenon. What do you think it was? Is it related to Bigfoot, or is it something else? Is it paranormal, or is it
UFOs?
UFOs?
After talking to the locals more about that, they all talk, and we're talking like literally 2 minutes down the road from a place where somebody lives that says that they see the lights right before they see Bigfoot. And in Minnesota, we have a lot of wetland. We have 10,000 lakes. I think there's more than that. But the Bigfoots, they love the wetlands. They love the marshes. They love the lakes and the areas that people aren't. And, the locals there talk about seeing the lights, and then they see Bigfoot. Now, most of the time, they're talking about green lights. This was a white light.
Wow.
And, from a native's perspective, I think that they might be water spirits, because water spirits come out of the water, but they don't necessarily have to stay in the water. And they are different colors. They're blue, they're green, they're, fire colored, and they're white. From a native perspective, that's what I think that they are. The orange orb UFO, the classic orange orb UFO that is like the #1 reported UFO in the world. And you can see them all over YouTube. The Marfa Lights, the Foo Fighters from World War II.
Right.
They're all talking about the same thing: the fireballs in the sky that can move faster and do aerodynamics faster and in ways that our jets still cannot do. And the World War II pilots thought that this was some type of new weapon that the enemy had. But here I think that they're water spirits. I still think that they're water spirits, and they're sentient beings. They're not solid. I don't think that they're aliens. Could they be something that interacts with us? Sometimes I think that they do. What do you think, Tammy?
The lights specifically, I think are, different things, because I've seen them personally outside my own house in Minnesota. My husband and I used to sit in the garage and watch just nature during the day, at night, whatever. We'd go outside, we'd sit on our couch and just watch. And one night we had a green light, probably about size of, I don't even know, a watermelon, a big watermelon maybe, and it just came out of the sky. It stopped about 30 or 40 feet up in the air, right across the road from us. It stopped, it stayed there, it moved a little bit, and then moved back the other way, and it stayed there for probably a good 2 minutes, and then it like shot into the earth. We went over the next day to see if there was like any, mark or anything that something had gone into the ground. And there was nothing there. There was nothing like burnt or moved or disturbed or flattened or anything. It was just gone. So, I mean, they could be spirits. They could be small, unidentified flying objects. I'm not sure. I've seen them several times.
Yeah.
So do I think that it's related to Bigfoot? Well, that's kind of hard to say too, because when you seek things, they have a way of finding you, and maybe that was some sort of communication coming to find me because I go and I look for Bigfoot. So it's hard to say. I don't have any definitive answers, and if I ever get to have a face-to-face conversation with Bigfoot, I'll be sure to ask him lots of questions.
Good old Daryl, huh?
Daryl,
Yep.
Steve, whatever.
I had asked Josh Hurd, we had him on the podcast last week, we were talking about these strange light phenomenon. We've captured him, ironically, at down in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, where we had a great Bigfoot sighting. We went there for paranormal and came away with more Bigfooting, just as much as paranormal. So we raised the question, do they go kind of hand in hand? But we captured these lights. We saw them in different colors. We saw them in the white, the green. We saw them in a reddish color. We saw them in an orange color. My question to you is, do you think the color plays a role in all of this? Kind of going back to what you talked about the first of the show, like with auras and different colors. About these lights, how do the colors play a role, possibly?
Red ones are angry. If they're like fire engine red, they're angry.
And I think that's true with all of them, all of those lights, because I've seen paranormal orbs, that are red, or different colors, and I've also seen fairy energy that I've caught on film. That some of them are red, some are orange, green, and in the fairy realm, it's different for each one, but red is always in every aspect of every phenomenon that I've come across: upset, angry, agitated.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, because we've seen, like I said, we've even seen them in blue, which were a little bit more calming. It seems like had a calming effect, which I know everybody says that if you wear a blue color or whatever, it's supposed to be calming. But in red is more aggressive, fire, angry kind of a thing. So yeah, it does play. I mean, it makes sense to what you're saying, Tammy, and also Jen. But yeah, and the thing is, when we filmed ours down in Oklahoma, I was filming in full spectrum, which is a purple tint, a hue to it, and these things were shining through that. It was green, it was red, it was just bright as can be. And my favorite part of the whole video is when we were down there doing this, we would all see them, so one of us would point into one direction and say, oh, there it is. And somebody else would be saying, oh, yeah, I see it, but they would be seeing it behind us, to the right, to the left, versus what we were seeing straight. So it was like surrounding us. And of all places, we caught these in an actual cemetery, which I don't know. And it was a Native American cemetery. It was the Cherokee Indians. And we didn't know if they went also hand in hand with the Native American spirits, because that's what we were encountering the whole time was Native American. And also the Bigfoot, which, as Jen had alluded to earlier, your background, your Indian upbringing, they've been talking about they being the Native Americans, have been talking about this creature for decades, years, whatever you want to call it, based upon the drawings in caves and stuff like that. They sketched out this bipedal creature that was tall than the actual humans that they drew. And but they always encountered a light from the sky. Do you think that has any tie-in with UFOs, as far as aliens or even being a interdimensional being? Bigfoot?
I've talked to Native people, different elders from different reservations in Minnesota and in North Dakota, but for the most part, mostly Ojibwe or Chippewa reservations. And then I've talked to some from like the Dakota people in South Dakota, and a lot of them think very much of the similar thing, that Bigfoot is a physical being, but that he has the ability to walk between worlds. And that literally an elder from the Turtle Mountain Reservation in North Dakota, which is right up on the Canadian border, and she told me that Bigfoot travels through the ground, through tunnels in the ground, but instantaneous travel from one place to another, like literally from one place to another like that through the ground. And when she talked about that, the way she didn't say portal, she said tunnel, but instantaneous physical travel from one place to another. So it's not like they're going into the ground and running through a tunnel. She said, no, it's instantaneous travel from one place to another. So what she was describing to me, I would call a portal. And I've heard this from different elders from different reservations talking about that. That they are physical beings, but they are also, she prayed to them when she would be driving through the Turtle Mountains at night. She would pray to Bigfoot, put out some tobacco and pray to Bigfoot, asking him to keep the deer off the road so that she didn't hit any deer on the way home. And she said she literally would see sometimes Bigfoot on the side of the road keeping deer back.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's
so,
incredible.
I mean, they pray to Bigfoot for help and for guidance. And, what's interesting is, I had heard these types of things, and then, that you can pray to Bigfoot. Well, when we were having that experience where we were surrounded and I gave the tobacco and I started speaking out loud in the Ojibwe language and introduced myself with my spirit names. Most people would call them Indian names, but they're actually the name of the spirit that lives within my body, which is actually me, not the body. I'm not the shell. That's just my earth suit that I wear when I'm here, but I'm really the spirit that lives within that body, that continues living when the body dies, So we name our spirit separate from the body. So my body's name is Jen, but my spirit is named something else. So Jen won't be here forever, but the spirit will. And so I introduced myself with my spirit names, and when I said thank you to Bigfoot, everything just stopped. Well, that for me was like confirmation of what the Native elders were telling me, that yes, you can pray to Bigfoot and they will hear you, they will answer you, So for me, I was really excited when that happened, when everything just stopped. But the girls that were with me didn't know what I was saying. They didn't speak Ojibwe. They didn't know that I had just thanked Bigfoot and then Bigfoot stopped. They were just scared. So,
right. They were terrified.
Going, yeah, that was awesome. So, I think that we can speak to him and that he listens, and I think he does respect the native way, and to give tobacco is an offering of respect. And as far as like whether or not they're connected with the lights, Native people say that they are. They don't necessarily say in what capacity that they are. I did have an elder tell me recently that he will talk to me in person, but not any other way.
Sure.
So I have to meet with him. But I showed him pictures of a water spirit that I had video of, and I just took screenshots of. I probably showed that to you in person. I haven't posted that online at all because it feels very sacred to me.
Of course.
And when I had showed him those pictures, he said, that is also connected to Bigfoot.
Wow.
But he wasn't going to tell me how.
Of course.
Until we got together in person. So I'm like, when can we get together? Now I want to hear what he has to say. But, but as far as I think that they are connected for sure. I don't know in what capacity that they are connected or how they're exactly connected, but I think that they are, because if you ask any Bigfoot researcher from anywhere or about the lights, they usually have seen the lights.
They've seen them, yeah. They kind of go hand in hand. Yep.
Yeah.
So definitely.
And as far like I had one experience where I was wondering if I was easily seeing remote viewing in locations of reservations in Minnesota because I have ancestors there. If it was easier for me, I was wondering that. So I was kind of wishing to look at a place that I'd never been, that I probably don't have ancestors at, that I wanted to look at remote view and see if I could see as clearly. And within a week of me thinking about that, somebody contacted me and asked me if I would remote view for him in North Carolina. And I got the good feeling from him, like, sure, give me the GPS of the area that you'd like me to look at. So he gave me the GPS of a forest. And I started looking around, and it was harder at first just because the trees are different. They have different trees and different foliage. It looks a lot different than what we have in Minnesota. But, I had to look at it one time, and then I had to, come back to it because that threw me off. But then I came back to it again, and I started seeing things right away. And the first thing that I saw was there was this open field outside of the forest, but it was contained. There was this field, but there was forest all around it. And I saw a Bigfoot standing in the field calling up to UFOs, asking for help because they wanted to move. And they were asking for help to move. And I wrote that down. And then I started to see Bigfoot crossing the road here all the time. And I marked that spot and sent him the GPS. And I said, he crosses the road here all the time to get to the water, but he actually lives over there. But he crosses right here all the time. They cross. And I said, most of them are really good at hiding. I can see them hiding in the woods back over here. But there's one that stands right here. And I sent him the GPS coordinates right here. If you watch that spot, you might see him because he's jumping up and down there. He's not trying to hide at all. Right on the water's edge. So, and I sent him all this stuff. And he hadn't told me that this was his research area and that he really knew a lot about this area. And he started sending me videos from the ground, instantly. Yes, they do cross the road here. Here's videos from that spot on the ground. And, and yes, that there is a field there. And because I said, if you watch that field, the skies over that field, I think you're going to see UFOs there. And he's like, we do see UFOs there.
Wow. That's awesome.
And he said, what's going on in that area is that they've plotted this area to start building around in there, homes and stuff. And he said, I wondered what was going to happen to them. And because I didn't know this guy, so I was like, should I tell him that I see them calling to the sky for help to move because they want to move? And but I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna tell him because that's what I saw and I just have to trust what I see. And so I told him that, and he's like, because I'm like, so if you watch the sky over that field, I think you might see some UFOs. He's like, we are seeing UFOs there, and they are going to start building in there. And we wondered what would happen to the Bigfoot in there.
Wow.
And but what I got was that they were asking the UFOs for help to move.
That's amazing.
So that brings the question to me, well, if they can travel through the ground in these portals, like the native people have told me that they can do, and I have no reason not to believe that, that if they can do that, then why wouldn't they just do that? And, so I think about things like that. And, maybe it's like us humans. Some of us have the ability to see auras consciously, and some of us have the ability to remote view, and some of us can bend spoons with our minds, things like that. And others can't, and so maybe just some of them can do that. So that's what makes sense to me.
Yep. Oh, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Do you think that the UFOs are connected to the portals?
I would say yes. I think that they are also probably using those. Yes. What do you think, Tammy?
I think so, because those footprints that they found at the gravel pit, what she didn't say is at the top of them, at the top of the gravel pit, the grass that was growing up on the gravel was all mashed down, and on the ground there were circles within circles within circles, and those footprints just stopped. They didn't go to another side.
Wow.
They didn't go anywhere. They just stopped.
That's
so wow. I think that there was a portal there And I think that they probably crossed through that, and I definitely think that that also is connected to the UFOs.
I don't know what to say. That's incredible. I mean, that's awesome.
I'm ready to go out and hit the field.
Right? You guys want to go with us now, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Well, see, that's what we
And
did.
I also think that they use gravel pits for hunting, too. I think that that's an easy hunting ground for them if they're at the top of the gravel pit and the deer. Because we were at a different gravel pit one time, and I found, like, the remains of a deer, and I stood there and I just said, this is the dinner plate. And that's what I felt like. This was dinner. They were hiding at the top, and deer come down there, and they're licking the minerals and whatever. And I think that they probably use them for hunting sometimes.
So what's your guys' take on why you never find, like, any carcasses of Bigfoot that have passed on? Is it more that the spiritual creatures, or is it the actual primates, or is it because nature takes over?
Well, it doesn't take long for nature to take over, but I think that they're more like humans. I think that they are a people, more than they are just an ape.
Sure.
Maybe that's not always true. Like, we hear more about skunk apes and stuff like that. They seem more ape-like to me than a people. But, I haven't been down looking for the skunk ape, to be honest. But just from what I've seen from other people about the skunk ape, he seems like a different type of thing.
Definitely.
And the Bigfoot that we encountered in Tennessee, although he seemed intelligent and aware of us being there and not concerned with us, he also didn't seem as advanced as the ones that I've encountered in Minnesota.
Gotcha. So what is your take on then the whole rock throwing, wood knocking thing? Is the wood knocking definitely a form of communication? The rock throwing is kind of a deterrent to keep predators away, or all the above, or none of the above?
I will not hit a tree. I love trees. I will not hit a tree. And I would love to have one of those wood knockers that you can knock.
Yeah.
I would do that, but I will not hit a tree. I'm just sorry. I just can't do it. They're sentient living beings, and a lot of people don't understand that, but they are.
Yeah. But do you think Bigfoot uses that to communicate? Is that their kind of like their telephone, we'll call it, their cell phone system?
I think that some of them do. I think some of them do that. The rocks definitely are to deter you from going a certain way. It's interesting how they never try to hit us.
Right.
They could easily hit us.
Oh, for sure.
and I have friends who are Bigfooters that, like in Ohio, the Ohio Night Stalkers, they have big, huge rocks getting hurled at them. They were getting in their car, and one came right through the moonroof and bam, hit.
Wow.
And we're talking big ones. I mean, they are dealing with something aggressive out there. I'm like, well, maybe it's because they're guys, because we've never had anything really aggressive with us like that. They've always been pretty polite with us. But like we had an experience in Nebraska. We went camping when we were coming back from Kansas City, Farrakhan. We found a place called Indian Caves State Park in just over the border in Nebraska. So we went there because they had petroglyphs, and I wanted to see the petroglyphs. And our car was so packed, we had no room for anything, no camping gear, and we're here, and we're like, we want to stay here, but we didn't have anything. Jenna's like, let's go buy new equipment. We're staying. I'm like, we can't, Jenna. Where are we going to put the stuff? There's no room.
Right.
And so we planned that the next year, then we went down, that we would camp there. We would bring our camping stuff. And so we had Tammy with us the next year, and we planned on our way back, we were camping there. And because the park closes at 10 o'clock, and if you're not staying the night, you have to leave. We wanted to be there at night, because when we had walked up to the caves, I was like, ooh, I feel stuff up here. And I want to be here at night. And so we did stay the next year. We camped there so that we could go up there at night. And so we get there at night, and it was so much fun because we had Tammy, and Tammy's daughter Gabby was along. And, it's dark, and we're playing with our night equipment, and we're having fun. And we go over to where the caves are, and there's all these stairs that you have to climb up to get to where the caves are. And they started walking, and it was just silent. There's no wind. There's no noise. There's just silent night. Nobody else is there. We're alone. And they start walking the stairs, and all of a sudden, something's throwing acorns at them.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
so Tammy, she was going, I was like hearing it, and I'm like, what is that? And then Tammy's yelling, it's acorns. Tell them about it.
Green acorns, not ones just falling off the tree. They were green acorns.
Wow. So
And
they're
we were walking
more
up
ripe.
the steps, and oh my gosh, is there a lot of spiders in the grass? But
Right.
we were walking up the stairs, and they were like landing right, like probably 1.5 to 2 feet in front of me as I was walking. And I'm shining the light around, and they're like cliffs with caves, and at the top of them there's a bunch of trees. And so I was, looking, shining the light up there, and then I continued a few more steps, and then there'd be another one. I'm looking up, and I'm like, okay, so what is it they don't want me to see here? Am I going to come across something? And I'm like, all right, guys, I'm going anyway. So, and they continued to throw them at me as we approached. They were throwing them in front of us, and we went ahead and went anyway, but they weren't like dropping. They were like projected at us, and they landed at our feet. They never hit us, but they were landing right in front of us the entire time that we were looking around up there.
Wow. So in that case, what do you think they were trying to tell you then? Because you're not really.
Well, they may have not wanted us
Maybe.
to go that way, but
Gotcha.
I was going that way anyway that time. But it really wasn't, it's a place that had stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't get off of the stair area and climb up into these little cave parts or anything like that. It's impossible, and I wouldn't do that anyway because it's a state park and that's disrespectful.
Yeah, definitely.
But we weren't going to go any farther than every other human had gone. So I wasn't, too concerned with what they were going to do, I think that if we had tried to push it and tried to go closer to them, that it probably would have gotten worse. But
sure.
Maybe they were just having a good time. Yeah, I'm sure they probably don't have a lot of people wandering around up there at night.
Yeah.
You gotta tell them the other story, Jen. You gotta tell them the story about.
Well, first when they came down from there, and so the whole time you hear this knock knock knock. You hear the acorns hitting the wood. Okay, you can hear the whole time. They come off the stairs, goes silent again. Absolute silence.
Wow.
No more acorns are flying. So, it was very, very obvious that they were getting thrown at them.
Message received.
And as soon as they were off the stairs, they were done. Nothing else was falling or knocking on there. So, it was very, very obvious that something up there was like, get out of here.
Yep.
So then we had been going around different areas in the park at night and, doing our equipment and whatnot. And so then we decided now we're done. We're tired. We're sitting at this one area. We parked the car, and it's really muddy because there was a downpour. Like, it was really, really bad because we didn't get to camp one night because it was such a bad storm when we weren't going to start camping. We ended up in a hotel.
Like a tornado warning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So we ended up in a hotel all bummed out. We're like, we're missing a whole day. And so then we went the next day and everything's wet. Everything's muddy. But we set up camp anyway. But so we were done. We were done squatching for the night. We're just sitting there. We got the car parked. We're sitting on top of a park bench by the river. Trees all around us. We turned off the equipment and we're just hanging out there, just talking. And all of a sudden we hear, wow! And it was the sounded like a big cat.
Okay. Oh no.
and I'm like, that sounds like a big cat. I'm like, get to the car.
Yeah.
So, and we're talking really muddy now.
Oh no.
They take off running for the car. And here's me trying to go, and I almost fell flat on my face.
Oh my gosh.
And I slipped.
Oh my gosh.
We always talk about what would happen if we were in trouble, and I'm like, I'll take one for the team because I'm the slowest runner. But
that's the answer to any riddle.
Don't have to outrun it, they just have to outrun you.
Only one person has to live to tell the story, so.
It's kind of funny because they're like, we would never leave you. And I'm like, you took off running.
He told us to
Right.
get into the car now. So
Oh
we
my
did.
gosh. That's awesome. So did you ever see
And then we
what it
looked
was?
up, and yes, there were cougars and mountain lions, and was there panthers also there, or?
No, I think there were bobcats, but there were
Gosh.
cougars, which are the same thing as a mountain lion.
Mhm.
It just depends on where you are, is what they call them, I
Yeah.
guess. But
Wow.
yeah.
That's the part I don't like about Sasquatching and all this stuff is the things you can't see but can see you of that nature.
Yes. And I have always said, if you experience a big cat, don't run. Because that's like throwing a ball of yarn in front of a cat. Then they want to chase it, you know?
Drop
And
the
then
catnip.
I get to the car now, and they just took off running. We'd never leave you, Jen. We'd never leave you.
Well, I have to say, if it had wanted to eat us, we would have never known it was there until
That's
it was
true.
too late. It wouldn't
Sure.
have roared at us. It would have just pounced on us.
Yeah, that is
It
very
wasn't
true.
trying to eat us.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I don't play around with big cats. That's
Uh,
one thing I just do not want to do.
No, thank you. No, thank you. That's why I'm a city person, because I stay away from all that. Now, the guys on that side of the table, they all love camping and all that stuff. You don't either? Oh, you do? Okay, I was like, I don't. No, I like warm showers. I like electronics, air conditioning. Yep. What'd you say?
Pampered.
No, not pampered by any means. I just like
Pampers.
that might be more close to an age, but you know.
You said it.
I know. You're all there too, so I'm going to try it, except for Jake.
I'm right there with you. I prefer the hotel
Uh-huh.
and go to the woods.
I mean, it's fun to experience and
Don't
see
get me
that.
wrong. After I go camping, I would love nothing more than to go straight to a spa to be pampered. But I do not mind at all being out there in the woods and being dirty and sweaty and whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I'm out in the middle of the woods. Who's going to see me?
That's true, yeah. So you guys, like we always do, that's why I say we, I never have yet, but Jason can speak to this. Every time we've gone out in the field like that, always come back with 1,000 ticks on us. You guys ever have that same problem?
Ticks are fun, aren't they? Tammy loves the duct tape.
Oh.
She will duct tape her pants to her socks.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's one of the 4 seasons in Minnesota is tick season. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And mosquitoes.
Oh
And
yeah.
That's the other season. and then we have a week of fall and winter. So
Yep.
those are the seasons.
So we get them all in 1 week. Maybe sometimes the same day in Kansas. We get winter, spring, fall, summer, you name it. It happens in 1 day.
I actually used to live in Kansas for probably about 4 or 5 years.
Oh, really? Yeah,
I
so.
lived in Lenexa.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, that's more city than where we're at. We're down in the sticks. No, I'm kidding. We're in Wichita, so we're not. We're in the metro also.
You are.
Oh, yeah. Jake lives out in the outskirts. Yeah, he lives out in the middle of. You live by Douglas, is that where you live?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's on the outside. He's one of those non-city folk.
How far is that from Kansas City then when we were?
About 2,
3 hours.
2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours.
If Grandpa's driving, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours. When I'm driving, it takes me about 2:15, 2.5.
198 miles.
Oh, okay.
They're close to Grove.
It's not that far. And it's pretty much a straight shot up to the interstate, except for you do go to the Flint Hills, which we have some good reported sightings out there too. The Flint Hills, there's a lot of unexplored territory out there that I hear a lot of good things out. As far as the spook lights, or spirit lights, ghost lights, whatever you want to call them, to Bigfoot, to you name it. There's a lot of stuff that we're curious about.
Western Kansas too.
Oh yeah, see, I'm from Western Kansas, so I'm originally from Dodge City, the old West, and yeah, there's a lot of good hunting out there. Number one, but also a lot of good area that they can migrate to, and live off of, because there's a lot of farms to water to you name it out there. There's some good eating out there for them. So do you guys feel that Bigfoot is just as curious about us as we are of them?
Go ahead, Tam.
Well, I think that they kind of think that we're annoying. So
We are.
I can go with that.
I think that they avoid
We really
us,
are.
and I think that people don't see them very often because they don't want to interact with us.
Right.
And I really think that they think that we are lesser beings than they are, and we're just annoying. So.
Yeah.
Well, if they're traveling through portals and through tunnels,
Then we are lesser beings.
Yeah, we are lesser beings.
A lot more sophisticated than we
But
give them credit.
If you talk to native elders that will talk to you,
Hmm.
you know, the traveling through to one place to another is something that some people
Hmm.
were able to do. Like my native elder told me that my ancestors could do it, and
Wow.
that I could remember how.
Hmm.
And you know, he told me stories about how my ancestors would walk right through rocks and go down to the southwest to trade with the Hopi.
Wow.
And that he said they still tell stories. The Hopi still tell stories today about it because they didn't know that they were walking through the rock to get there. And they would go down there to trade goods.
Mhm.
And he said that one day they were going to leave, and the Hopi were leaving, and they turned around to wave goodbye one more time, and they saw them walk through the rock.
Oh, wow.
And he said they still tell stories to this day about it.
Wow.
So
That's
he said
awesome.
it's something that you can remember. It's in your blood.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of why I like to visit places that have petroglyphs and
Mhm.
pictographs of the circles within circles. I
Mhm.
want to go to those places and see if I think that they were drawn on places that actually were portals.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
So I
Yeah.
want to get to those places,
Yeah.
but it's really hard to find them. There's not like a website anywhere that tells you where they are. You just like, when we're traveling, I'm on the hunt.
Canopolis,
So like
Kansas.
when we were coming back from Kansas City that first time, and we saw that there was Indian Cave State Park, I looked it up on my phone. I'm like, Indian Cave State Park, and Petric, we got to go there.
Right.
But they didn't have that petroglyph there.
Oh, no.
But they don't show you what they have there. You have to go there and see.
Sure. Makes sense, yeah. Dan, what did you say? What place again?
Over in Canopolis, they have the petroglyphs over there.
Did it really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Is it that one? The circles within circles?
I don't know. I haven't really looked at them too heavily.
Huh.
Need to go.
Well, I
It's
think
cool.
There's been sightings over there.
Yeah,
they-
they
That's
have.
I know
fun.
Canopolis is a big state lake, yeah, and a big park.
There's one in Kentucky that is the giant. It's the something to do with the Kentucky giant rock.
Hmm.
And it has that symbol all over it. And the story is that that's where the giants came up out of the ground through that rock, and they were eating the people. And like literally they were giants and they were eating the people. And so to me, when I saw that on TV, it was the first time I saw something like that.
Mhm.
Was on TV on that show. And I would looked at it and I was intuitively was like, that's a big sign that says, do not open this.
Yeah. That's safe to
This
say,
is a
yeah.
door you don't want to open. And so that's one that I don't care to visit. But I've seen pictures of ones down in the Southwest that I can look at it and I can see the directions on how to open it. It looks like directions. So I'd love to go to those ones. I have never been down that way yet. So someday.
Wow, very cool. That's awesome. We're close to, well, we're over time, that's okay. We don't have a definitely cut off, but just anybody have any final questions before we let the ladies go for the evening?
One question.
Not you. I'm just kidding, go ahead. Go ahead, Jason.
Never mind.
I don't want to ask now.
So, if you, can you describe what they look like, and does it match what eyewitnesses have claimed for decades?
Well, I think they're like 8, 9, 10 feet tall. I think
Yeah.
the majority of them are like 8. And they're very much without. They look like they don't have a neck. They're like conal head, bigger shoulders, long, super long arms. Like, when I see video on TV of of people who think this is a Bigfoot video. I'm like, those arms are not long enough. That is
Right.
definitely not a Bigfoot. You know, I looked straight for the arms. Those arms are not long enough. That's not a Bigfoot. You know, instantly. You know,
Yeah.
you can tell if their fingers don't go closer to, you know, down by their knees, and it's not a Bigfoot. You know, you know, they always have the long arms. I think that there are that they look different in different places. You know,
Yeah.
definitely the skunk ape is looking different than what we have in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think they look different. They're more ape-like.
Kind of all across the world that
where-
they differ.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like the Yeti to the Yowie and stuff, they all kind of blend in with their environments. They may have different color hair, maybe, or quality.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that maybe they have adapted to their environment, because in Minnesota we have really cold. I mean, really cold
Mhm.
winters, and as far as we can tell, they don't use fire.
Right.
That's a good point.
So how are they staying warm? Because they're not living in the trees. Not in the winter. There's no
No.
way. So I think that they live underground, that they dig down under the ground to, because the Indians used to do that up here. You know, I hear stories from clients of mine who were settlers that came over from, you know, Norway or Germany, and they traveled to Minnesota to get farm, and they were not prepared for the winter that they had, and they were dying because it was too harsh. They were not ready for that. And I've had clients tell me that the grandfather tells them about the Indians who came when everybody was dying. They came, and they came with the ability to pick everybody up and take them with them, and they just took them home with them, and they taught them how to live in the cold winter. And literally, if it was a super cold winter, because sometimes it's not so bad, but sometimes it's really bad, 50 below zero bad. That's without a wind chill.
No, thank you.
You know, you can't live in that outside.
Right.
So even in a teepee or a wigwam, you need to have something warmer than that. So in those types of winters, they would actually dig into the hillsides and have these winter homes that were dug into the hillsides. And then in the spring, they'd block up the doorway to these places so that no other animals moved in there, like bears or anything. And so they block them up with rocks and whatever. And it's, you know, for years before I looked for Bigfoot or anything like that, I was out looking for these old structures that were still there that nobody knew about. I was out looking for those, and I did find one. And it was on an island in a lake.
Wow.
So, but you know, some people saw me out there with my stick poking the ground, and then they'd see me jumping, and they're like, "What are you doing out there, Jen?" And I'm like, "I'm looking for the doorways to these old, you know, homes that they used in the wintertime that they would block up." And so I poke it to see if the ground gives, and if it doesn't, then I'll stomp on it, and if it doesn't give, then I'll jump on it. And they're like, "You're gonna fall in," and if you find, I'm like, that's the whole point. I want to find one. So, but the Indians took these people and they brought them home for the winter and taught them how to live, and so there's all these clients of mine that talk about how they wouldn't even have been alive today if they hadn't saved them from the winter. So, you know, I think that Bigfoot probably does a similar thing where they live underground in the wintertime, in the hillsides or under the ground to keep warm, because you have to. It's a necessity. And so, you know, that would be different than perhaps a Bigfoot that lives down in the south where you don't have those extreme weather situations.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody else? Okay. We do have a viewer.
I do got a lot more stuff.
No, I was saying, we'll definitely have you back on. We have questions for days that we haven't had a chance to touch upon. One of our viewers asked if you guys ever thought about going to Mexico or South America to see portals.
I definitely would love to go south for that. Yes, I would love to do that. You know, for the most part, I mean, this year we've been quiet because of COVID. You know, our events have mostly been canceled, and you know, we've been staying safe from that. But you know, for the most part, we're traveling 6 months out of the year, 1 week a month, going to events, and which has been just amazing for us. Because when we get to a place, then we can go look for Bigfoot there in a spot that we would never have the opportunity to do that otherwise if we weren't going to these places. So, like last year, we went to Washington State. I had never been there before. Wow. We were
Go
supposed to be
next
there
year.
again twice this
Yeah.
year for different events, and both of those been but now pushed into next year.
Of
So
course, yeah.
next year we'll be back in Washington. That was awesome. I just love it.
Yep.
Beautiful place.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there. I got to visit, not for bigfooting hunting, just to visit years ago, like 30 years ago or whatever it was, and yeah, I fell in love with the place. There's just a different type of, well, even the people up there are just so different for a big city, especially like in Seattle area. They're just so nice. You don't see that from big cities people.
They're all stoned.
Okay, maybe there's that.
Yes, but they are very.
Okay.
Says the guy in the.
I know, in the tie-dye shirt.
Bigfoot, baby.
Yeah, we're all wearing Bigfoot shirts except for Jake. He didn't get the memo.
No.
I'm wearing, actually, I had to do it. People at home, you can't really see it. It says She-Squatchers. It's your shirt.
Oh, hey! Thanks
I
for
got it from
representing.
the KC Paracon last year.
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, it's green, and the green screen just bleeds right out, so it looks black on camera. But trust me, it's there. And Jason, what are you wearing? You wearing your Bigfoot rock ones?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There you go.
Most of us on the team are big believers of Bigfoot. We've had experience with him down in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, even here in Kansas. Jason, who's a part of Bigfoot in Kansas, does it also too with another guy on our team. He set up actually what happened was, real quick, Tahlequah's experiences down there we had was enough for one of our team members named Brendan to start a team here in Kansas because of all we saw and experienced. We experienced the rock throwing, the wood knocks. We saw these amazing structures that were, I can't even describe them. They looked like little half huts built into the mountainside that were made out of your typical, whatever, twigs to branches to like grass structures, kind of what we showed from you had earlier on the screen. We also caught these gigantic footprints, which out there where we were at, there should be nobody out there walking around barefoot, number one. Number two, some of them were, like there was one in particular where it had the pinky toe broken to where it was pointing outward. So if this thing's out there, hurt, it's walking around with a broken pinky toe. And then lastly, we saw this one where it was going towards a big 30-foot drop bluff, basically. So if this thing walked off, we should have saw at some point a body, a carcass, whatever. Nothing. It just, I don't know if it would, like you talked about earlier, did it disappear into the interdimensional thing? Did it make the jump and survive and take off? Who knows? I mean, it's just amazing. They're phenomenal creatures.
Well, one of the things about that circle within circle within circle is if you were to look up like sand, what is it? Sound frequency with sand. There are certain frequencies of sound that will make sand make that. So I think that we could potentially open them with that frequency.
Very interesting. I never thought about that, but I like that theory. Yeah, it's very possible. Have you guys tried to explore any of that angle?
This is why I want to get to those petroglyphs that look like that.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense.
This is my plan.
There you go. Well, you'll have to definitely let us know when you're going out there and how afterwards how it went, basically. I'm sure you're going to go. I can almost guarantee you're going. Just not this year. Maybe next year. No, but, well, we'll go ahead and say goodnight this evening to our viewers at home. We want to say thank you. God, I'm having a hard time talking. I want to say thank you to Jen Cruz. I'm going to try it one more time for the third time. Tammy Jackson. Trickle? Yay, last one. God.
Clapping for the old man.
Hey, now. By the way, Jen's older, just so you know. I know your birthday, because we messed up last year. I'll tell you a quick story. Last year at the Paracon, when we were on stage, I found out after the fact it was Jen's birthday that day.
Oh, really?
And I told her, had I known, somebody would have got a special birthday singing by all of us on stage, but I blew that opportunity.
I don't know how you didn't know that because I kept advertising on our Facebook page that it's my birthday.
Really? And I
Bring
missed
me
that.
you're welcome to bring me presents. And people did bring presents.
That is awesome. I'm just going to start saying it's my birthday everywhere we go, even though it's not really my birthday. There you go. I like that idea.
Somebody even brought me chocolate-covered strawberries and a teddy bear
Wow.
and balloons.
See? We're doing it all wrong, guys. Darn it.
Yeah.
No, but happy belated birthday to you, by the way. I know it was what month are we in? September?
It was in
So August, okay. It was, yeah.
Tammy's birthday is 4 days after mine.
Oh, happy birthday to you, too. I didn't know that. See?
She's 1 year. She's 1 year younger than me.
Oh, my gosh. And see, I'm
We
very...
actually met when we were kids.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
In Virginia.
Of all places, huh? And you come full circle and meet again later on years in Minnesota and start the team and do your thing. And now Tammy went back to Virginia. But still part of the team.
We'll still be a team.
Yes, definitely.
So I'll go out there. She'll come back. It'll
Very
be
cool. Excellent. Well, if you want to stay on the line real quick here, I'll go to end the show, and we want to thank the She-Squatchers for joining us this evening, and we'll have them on hopefully again soon without any technical difficulties on our end, and also with Jenna also too. So, yep. So, well, real quick, just a programming note. Our upcoming show for this upcoming week will be on Saturday instead of Sunday. We're going to have a special guest in studio, actually. We're going to have Jason Kupsik from KC Paracon, the Ectoplasm Show, and also Larry Buchanan, who's also, he used to do things with spooks and stuff like that. So they'll be in studio, and then we're going to do some things afterwards, and we're going to investigate a paranormal hotspot here. So make sure you tune in. Yeah. Make sure you tune in next week for Saturday special episode of Cryptic Heartland, 7 to 9 Central Standard Time, same time, just different day, one day earlier. So once again, thank you to the She-Squatchers. Ladies, stay on the line for 1 second. We'll say everybody's off air. But for now, everybody else, this has been Cryptic Heartland, episode 118 with special guest She-Squatchers. We'll see you next week. Thank you, guys.
You